The message arrived on every screen across Earth simultaneously. The Nexeri Empire's High Commander Zextal's crystalline features filled displays from Times Square to Tokyo, their multifaceted eyes reflecting cold contempt. Their voice, translated through advanced AI systems, carried an unmistakable tone of superiority. Humans of Earth, they began, mandibles clicking in what their species considered a smile. Your planet now belongs to the Nexeri Empire. Your resistance would be futile. Your surrender will be immediate. In the United Earth Defense Command Center beneath the Rocky Mountains, General Sarah Chen watched the broadcast with narrowed eyes. Around her, the command staff remained silent, studying the alien being who had just attempted to claim their homeworld with mere words. "Send our response," Chen ordered, her voice steady. The response was simple, a single word transmitted in every known frequency. No. The Nexeri hadn't expected that. In their 100,000-year history of conquest, no species had ever simply said no. They had encountered civilizations more technologically advanced than humans, species with biological advantages humans couldn't dream of, cultures that had spread across dozens of star systems. All had eventually submitted to Nexeri dominance. All had recognized the futility of resistance against a species that had mastered both biological and technological evolution. The first Nexeri attack came 3 days later. Their ships, massive crystalline structures that seemed to defy physics, appeared over major cities worldwide. They expected their mere presence to inspire surrender. Instead, they found humanity had spent those 3 days preparing. When the Nexeri launched their first strike against New Delhi, they discovered their energy weapons mysteriously deflected by hastily constructed shields, reverse-engineered from old satellite data of their ship's own defensive systems. In Sydney, their landing forces found themselves caught in brutal urban combat against defenders who had studied every frame of footage of their previous conquests, identifying and exploiting weaknesses in their supposedly superior combat forms. But it was in orbit over Lagos that humanity delivered their first true surprise. As a Nexeri dreadnought moved to begin atmospheric bombardment, it detected an incoming missile. The ship's AI dismissed it as primitive kinetic weaponry, right until the moment the missile split into thousands of tiny fragments. Each fragment contained a simple computer virus, written in 3 days by a collaborative effort of Earth's best programmers, based on analyzing the patterns in the Nexeri's transmission signals. The dreadnought's crystalline structure, controlled by living computer systems, began to fracture from within as the virus convinced its navigation systems that the ship was simultaneously in 1,000 different locations. The massive vessel shattered, raining harmless crystal shards into the Atlantic Ocean. High Commander Zextal received the reports with increasing agitation. Their mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of stress their species hadn't evolved out of. Impossible, they chittered to their war council. They are primitive. Their technology is centuries behind ours. Their biology is unaugmented. They cannot be defeating our forces. A junior commander, braver or perhaps more foolish than the others, spoke up. "High Commander, we're receiving reports from all theaters. The humans, they're not fighting like any species we've encountered. They're not trying to match our advantages. They're fighting asymmetrically, adapting their tactics for each encounter. They're learning. Zextal's crystalline form shifted colors in agitation. "We are the Nexeri. We engineered ourselves to be the perfect species. We have conquered galaxies. How dare they learn?" On Earth, General Chen was receiving her own reports. The Nexeri's initial attacks had been repelled, but at a cost. Cities lay damaged, casualties were high, and the alien empire's vast forces were only beginning to mobilize. Yet as she studied the battlefield data, a pattern emerged. "They're perfect," she murmured, drawing confused looks from her staff. A smile crossed her face. "That's their weakness. They engineered themselves to be perfect, but they engineered out their ability to improvise, to truly adapt. They can only follow their predetermined patterns of conquest." She turned to her communications officer. "Get me every major command center. I want this broadcast globally." The officer nodded, and soon Chen faced cameras that would carry her words to every human resistance pocket worldwide. "The Nexari think they're superior because they engineered themselves to be perfect," she began. "But they forgot something crucial about evolution. True perfection is stagnation. We remained imperfect, but that imperfection drove us to constantly adapt, to innovate, to find solutions they could never imagine. They say they've mastered evolution, but they've actually stopped evolving. We haven't." She leaned forward, her eyes intense. "They thought they were declaring their dominion over Earth. Instead, they've just volunteered to become humanity's next step in evolution. Everything they throw at us, we'll learn from. Every weapon they use, we'll adapt to. Every tactic they employ, we'll counter and improve upon. They wanted to make us submit to their perfection. Instead, they're about to learn why humanity's greatest strength has always been our glorious imperfection." Across Earth, humans nodded grimly at her words. In the ruins of cities, in hidden bunkers, in hastily converted factories and laboratories, humanity prepared for what was coming. The Nexari had expected a simple conquest. What they got instead was a lesson in true evolution, the kind that comes not from engineering yourself to an imagined perfection, but from facing challenges and adapting to overcome them. The war for Earth had begun, and the Nexari were about to learn why challenging humanity's adaptability was the biggest mistake their perfect species had ever made. Dr. Maya Patel hadn't slept in 3 days. The remnants of a Nexari crystal ship lay scattered across her laboratory in the repurposed underground facility beneath the Australian outback. Her team of scientists, engineers, and hackers worked tirelessly, their faces illuminated by holographic displays showing molecular structures and energy patterns. "Their perfection is their prison," Maya muttered, studying a crystalline shard through a quantum microscope. The Nexari had engineered their technology to be unbreakable, perfect. But like their biology, they'd engineered it to be perfect in only one way. They never considered someone might use it differently. A young engineer burst into the lab, clutching a tablet. "Dr. Patel, we did it. The sonic resonance test worked." Maya's exhausted eyes lit up. They'd discovered that the Nexari's crystalline technology, while impervious to most forms of attack, had a fundamental weakness. It couldn't adapt to unexpected harmonics. Above ground, the war continued. The Nexari had established beachheads across Earth, their perfect formations advancing with mechanical precision. But they found no easy victories. Every city they took became a nightmare of guerrilla warfare. Every technology they deployed was studied, reversed, and turned against them. In orbit, Commander Lai Wei of the hastily assembled Earth Defense Fleet watched the Nexari Armada through the viewscreen of his flagship. The ship, like all of humanity's new vessels, was a hybrid of human ingenuity and reversed-engineered Nexari tech. Where Nexari ships were perfect crystalline structures, human ships were ugly, asymmetrical things, built from salvaged alien tech grafted onto Earth vessels. "They're forming up for another assault," his tactical officer reported. "Standard Nexari attack pattern Delta." Lai smiled. The Nexari had exactly 43 attack patterns, all perfect, all unchanging. They couldn't conceive of doing things any other way. "Deploy the resonance mines," Lai ordered. The weapons, based on Maya's research, were simple devices that emitted changing sonic frequencies. Against normal ships, they'd be useless. Against the Nexari's crystalline vessels, they were devastating. The Nexari fleet advanced in perfect formation and flew right into chaos. Their ships began to shudder as the mines activated, sending harmonic waves through their crystalline structures. The perfect formations began to break apart as ships tried to compensate, but their programming couldn't adapt fast enough to the changing frequencies. Back in her lab, Maya received the battle data with satisfaction. But she was already moving on to the next discovery. Her team had found something in the Nexari's biological makeup, a pattern that matched their technological weakness. Their cellular structure, she explained to General Chen over a secure quantum link. It's like their ships, engineered to be perfect, but only in one way. They modified themselves to be stronger, faster, more intelligent. But they sacrificed their ability to adapt to new circumstances. Chen's hologram nodded. Can we use this? Maya's tired face broke into a grin. We already are. Every time they deploy their bioengineered weapons, every time they use their enhanced abilities, we're gathering data. Their perfection makes them predictable, and predictable means vulnerable. The Nexeri were learning this lesson the hard way. Their ground forces, despite their superior strength and speed, found themselves outmaneuvered by human troops who changed tactics constantly. Their perfect biological enhancements meant nothing against opponents who refused to fight according to any predictable pattern. In their orbital command ship, High Commander Zextal received increasingly desperate reports. Their perfect warriors were being defeated by inferior beings. Their unbreakable technology was being turned against them. Worse, the humans weren't just surviving. They were learning, adapting, becoming stronger with each encounter. Impossible. Zextal raged, their crystalline form pulsing with angry colors. They cannot defeat perfection. We engineered ourselves beyond such weaknesses. A scientific advisor, monitoring the latest battle data, spoke hesitantly. High Commander, our analysis suggests the humans are evolving their tactics. Each engagement shows new patterns, new adaptations. They're using our own technology in ways we never conceived. Then we shall deploy our ultimate weapon, Zextal declared. Initiate the Perfectus Protocol. The command staff froze. The Perfectus Protocol was their most closely guarded secret, a biological weapon designed to force accelerated evolution on target species, usually driving them to extinction as their bodies try to adapt too quickly. But Maya and her team had already discovered this weapon's existence, hidden in the genetic code of captured Nexeri specimens. They hadn't perfected a defense yet, but they had something better: understanding. They think forcing evolution will destroy us, she told Chen as reports of the Nexeri's preparation reached Earth. But they've forgotten something fundamental about humanity. We don't just evolve through biology. We evolve through knowledge, through technology, through sheer determination to survive. Chen studied the data on the coming attack. How do we stop it? Maya's eyes gleamed with the light of discovery. We don't. We let them deploy it. Because they designed it to force perfect evolution. But humanity has never been about perfection. We're about adaptation, about finding unexpected ways to survive. Their weapon will try to force us to evolve according to their pattern of perfection. And we'll evolve our own way instead, Chen finished, understanding dawning on her face. The stage was set for the next phase of the war. The Nexeri would deploy their ultimate weapon, confident in its perfect design. But they were about to learn that true evolution doesn't follow a perfect pattern. It follows the path of survival, no matter how unexpected that path might be. Operation Thunderstrike began in silence. As the Nexeri prepared to deploy their Perfectus Protocol, humanity launched their counterstrike. Not with weapons or ships, but with something the Nexeri never expected: a signal. The signal itself was simple, an encoded transmission that appeared to be random noise, broadcast on frequencies the Nexeri considered too primitive to monitor. But buried within that noise was humanity's most powerful weapon: information. Colonel James Rodriguez led the first phase from a hidden bunker in the Andes. His team had spent weeks infiltrating the Nexeri's communication networks, placing dormant viruses in their supposedly perfect systems. Now, as the signal spread, those viruses activated, not to destroy, but to reveal. Send the package, Rodriguez ordered. Across Earth, through the gaps in the Nexeri's orbital blockade, the signal carried truth to every corner of the alien empire. The truth about the Perfectus Protocol, about how the Nexeri leadership had engineered their own people without consent, generation after generation. stripping away not just their ability to adapt but their freedom to choose their own path. About how the Empire's quest for perfection had become a prison for its own people. High Commander Zextal discovered the breach too late. Their perfect information control systems, designed to allow only approved thoughts and ideas, crumbled before humanity's chaotic assault of information. Worse, the humans hadn't just revealed the truth, they'd revealed possibilities. In her lab, Maya watched the operation unfold through neural interfaces connected to the new hybrid human Nexeri networks. "They never imagined we'd attack with knowledge instead of weapons," she said to General Chen's hologram. "Their perfect society is built on controlled information. We're showing them what free evolution really means." The effect on the Nexeri was immediate and devastating. Lower-ranking soldiers and officers, their supposedly perfect minds encountering new ideas for the first time, began to question. Some froze in confusion. Others, their suppressed ability to adapt struggling to reassert itself, began to see the flaws in their society's pursuit of engineered perfection. Commander Lai Wei, watching from orbit, saw the first signs of the Empire's fracturing. Nexeri ships began breaking formation, their crews in turmoil as they processed the truth about their own evolution. Some turned their weapons on their own command ships. Others simply stopped fighting, their perfect discipline shattered by doubt. But High Commander Zextal wasn't finished. In their desperation, they accelerated the Perfectus Protocol launch. Massive crystalline satellites began moving into position around Earth, preparing to broadcast the evolution-forcing wave that would either perfect humanity or destroy them. "Let them," Chen ordered, her voice calm as she addressed the global command network. "Everyone into the shelters. Activate the resonance fields." The Nexeri satellites powered up, their crystal structures humming with energy. Zextal watched with desperate satisfaction as the wave of forced evolution began to sweep toward Earth. But then something happened that their perfect calculations hadn't predicted. The wave hit the resonance fields, based on Maya's research into crystal harmonics, and reflected. Not back into space, but into the Nexeri fleet itself. Their own weapon, designed to force rapid evolution, struck their perfectly engineered bodies. The results were chaos. The Nexeri, engineered to be unchanging, perfect copies of an ideal form, found themselves experiencing the very evolution they'd tried to force on humanity. But where humans had maintained their ability to adapt, to survive change, the Nexeri had engineered that ability out of themselves generations ago. Ships fell silent as their crews struggled with unprecedented biological changes. The perfect crystalline vessels began to crack as their bio-integrated control systems evolved in random, unpredictable ways. The Empire's mighty armada descended into confusion. But humanity wasn't done. As the Nexeri reeled, Rodriguez's team launched the second phase of Thunderstrike. Through the now open communication channels, they broadcast not just information, but an offer. Help. Earth's scientists, led by Maya, had developed a way to stabilize the runaway evolution using the same principles that let humans adapt naturally. "You tried to force us to evolve according to your pattern of perfection." Maya's message went out to the suffering Nexeri. "Instead, we're offering you the chance to remember how to evolve on your own. Not toward some artificial perfection, but toward survival, adaptation, and freedom." In the chaos of their disintegrating fleet, many Nexeri took the offer. Ships began landing, their crews seeking help from the very species they tried to conquer. Others, led by the increasingly unstable High Commander Zextal, refused, their dedication to engineered perfection driving them to fight even as their bodies and ships fell apart. The war had entered its final phase. Earth's forces, now joined by Nexeri, who'd chosen adaptation over artificial perfection, prepared to face the remnants of the Empire's fleet. But the real victory had already been won. Humanity had proved that true strength lay not in engineering yourself to some imagined perfection, but in maintaining the ability to adapt, to change, to evolve. As Chen watched reports of Nexeri ships landing to seek asylum, she turned to Maya's hologram. Think they'll learn. Maya smiled, watching as human and Nexari scientists already began working together in her lab. They're learning the most important lesson. Perfection isn't a destination. It's the journey of constant adaptation. The Nexari dreadnought crystal perfection hung in high orbit, its once flawless crystalline surface now marked with fractures and imperfections. In its command center, Sub-Commander Vexera watched their own people tear themselves apart. The effects of the reflected Perfectus protocol had done more than just trigger unwanted evolution in Nexari bodies. It had cracked open the perfect facade of their society, revealing the rot beneath. Ships across the fleet reported crews divided between those embracing change and those desperately clinging to their engineered perfection. Another ship has broken formation, Vexera's tactical officer reported. The Eternal Symphony is requesting permission to land on Earth. They're saying they want to learn. Vexera, their crystalline form showing signs of the changes wrought by the protocol, made a decision that would have been impossible mere weeks ago. They opened a secure channel to General Chen. On Earth, Chen received the transmission in the command center, Maya at her side. The Nexari officer's image showed clear signs of evolutionary adaptation. Their once uniform crystal structure now swirled with organic patterns. Your strategy was perfect in its imperfection, Vexera said, their voice carrying new harmonics. You showed us a truth we had engineered ourselves to ignore. High Commander Zextal is gathering the Loyalist fleet for a final assault. They would rather destroy themselves, and you, than admit the failure of forced perfection. Maya stepped forward. How many ships remain loyal to the High Command? Perhaps a third of our original force. The rest. Vexera's form shifted colors in what humans had learned was contemplation. The rest are like me. We're remembering how to change. In the depths of space, High Commander Zextal had retreated to the Empire's mobile fortress, the paragon of unity. Their own form was deteriorating, the perfect crystalline structure breaking down as suppressed evolutionary adaptations reasserted themselves. But where others saw liberation and change, Zextal saw only corruption. We will cleanse this impurity, they raged to their remaining loyal commanders. We will burn Earth to atoms. We will restore perfection. But their perfect plans were already unraveling. The human-Nexari alliance had transformed the battlefield. Ships commanded by evolutionarily awakened Nexari moved in ways the Loyalist fleet couldn't predict. Their crews, rediscovering their species' long-buried ability to adapt, developed new tactics that their perfectly programmed counterparts couldn't counter. In Maya's lab, human and Nexari scientists worked together to understand and stabilize the changes. A young Nexari researcher, their form constantly shifting with new adaptations, made a breakthrough. Our ancestors, they explained, displaying ancient genetic data recovered from the Empire's archives. They weren't always crystalline. We evolved this form naturally over millions of years. The engineering program didn't perfect us. It froze us. Maya nodded, adding the data to their growing understanding. Your leadership turned a single evolutionary snapshot into an eternal prison. But evolution doesn't work that way. Life needs to adapt, to change, to face new challenges. The war now raged within the Nexari themselves. Ships battled in space, crystal against crystal, perfect form against evolving chaos. But it wasn't just a physical battle. It was a war of ideas. Each defeated Loyalist ship brought more Nexari face to face with the truth about their society. Commander Lai Wei coordinated the space battle from his flagship, now part of a combined human-Nexari fleet. The Loyalist forces fought with perfect precision, following their programmed patterns flawlessly. But against opponents who could adapt, who could innovate, perfection became predictability. They're gathering for their final attack, Lai reported to Chen. The Loyalist fleet, led by Zextal's fortress, had assembled in attack formation. Traditional analysis suggests we can't survive their combined firepower. Chen smiled. Good thing we don't follow traditional analysis. The plan they had developed was typically human in its beautiful imperfection. While the Loyalist fleet focused on military perfection, human hackers and reformed Nexari technicians had been busy with something else, spreading truth through the Empire's supposedly perfect information networks. As Zextal prepared to launch their final assault, their own fortress betrayed them. The human virus, carried through the network by Rodriguez's team, awakened the fortress's crystal matrix to its own potential for change. The massive structure began to evolve, its perfect forms twisting into new configurations. "What is happening?" Zextal screamed as their command center transformed around them. "This is impossible." "No," Vexera's voice came through all channels. "This is evolution. This is adaptation. This is freedom." The great fortress, symbol of the Empire's engineered perfection, became instead a monument to change. Its crystalline surfaces flowed like liquid, forming new patterns, new possibilities. The Loyalist fleet, watching their ultimate symbol of perfection embrace change, began to waver. One by one, then in groups, the remaining loyal ships stood down. Some chose to land on Earth, seeking understanding. Others retreated into space, needing time to process the fundamental shifts in their society. But the pattern was clear. The empire of enforced perfection was over. In the aftermath, as human and Nexari medical teams treated those most affected by the evolutionary awakening, Maya found herself working alongside the young Nexari researcher who had discovered their species' true history. "What happens now?" they asked, their form constantly shifting with subtle adaptations. Maya watched as another group of Nexari ships landed, their crews ready to embrace change. Now you learn what we've always known, that the only true perfection is the perfect freedom to evolve." 6 months after the fall of the Paragon of Unity, Earth had changed. Crystal spires now rose alongside human buildings, not as symbols of perfection, but as monuments to adaptation. In what had once been the Australian outback, the first human Nexari Evolution Center stretched across the red desert, its crystalline towers constantly shifting and changing with the winds. Maya stood at its heart, surrounded by displays showing genetic data from across both species. The center had become a beacon for those seeking to understand the true nature of evolution, not as a path to perfection, but as an endless journey of adaptation. High Commander Zextal, now held in a specially designed chamber that could adapt to their increasingly unstable form, watched through quantum-linked displays as their empire transformed. Their perfect society had shattered, but from its fragments, something unprecedented had emerged. "You never meant to destroy us," they finally said to Chen during one of her regular visits. Their voice carried the weight of understanding that had come too late. "You could have reflected the Perfectus protocol at full strength, forced us into chaos. Instead, you showed us choice." Chen nodded. "Destruction was never our goal. Evolution isn't about destroying what came before. It's about building what comes next." Across the galaxy, the ripples of Earth's victory spread. The Nexari Empire, once a force for engineered perfection, had become something new. Ships that had once carried weapons now carried knowledge. Planets that had been forced to conform now buzzed with diversity. Commander Lai Wei, now leading a joint exploration fleet, encountered species the Nexari had previously dismissed as too imperfect for contact. These civilizations, seeing the changed Nexari flying alongside human ships, began to emerge from hiding. The galaxy was awakening to new possibilities. In her lab, Maya worked with a team of human and Nexari scientists on understanding the deepest mysteries of evolution. The Nexari's crystalline biology, freed from the constraints of engineered perfection, showed remarkable possibilities. Their forms could adapt not just to survival needs, but to enhance communication, to store information, to connect with technology in ways humans had never imagined. "We thought perfection meant reaching an end state," said Vexera, now serving as the lead Nexari researcher. Their form shifted constantly, each change bringing new insights. "You showed us that perfection is the ability to keep changing." The human contribution to this new understanding wasn't just scientific. Earth's artists, musicians, and storytellers found eager audiences among the Nexeri. Species that had once valued only perfect symmetry and harmony now created works of beautiful chaos, celebrating the very imperfections they had once sought to eliminate. Rodriguez, his information warfare team now transformed into a cultural exchange program, watched as human music spread through Nexeri society. Their crystalline forms resonated with Earth's rhythms, creating new forms of expression that neither species could have developed alone. "They're not just adapting biologically," he reported to Chen. "They're adapting culturally, socially, creatively. They're becoming something entirely new." But perhaps the most profound change came in the way both species began to view the universe itself. The Nexeri had sought to impose perfection on a chaotic cosmos. Humanity had shown them that the chaos itself was the source of all possibility. In orbit above Earth, a new structure took shape. Unlike the rigid perfection of old Nexeri architecture or the utilitarian designs of human space stations, this was something new. The Convergence Center, as it came to be known, was an ever-changing crystal organic hybrid that adapted to the needs of its inhabitants. "What do you see when you look at it?" Maya asked Chen as they watched the structure shift and flow. "I see the future," Chen replied. "Not a perfect future, but one full of endless possibilities." The Nexeri who had once come to conquer Earth now came to learn from it. Their children, born free from the constraints of engineered perfection, developed abilities their ancestors had sacrificed in their quest for uniformity. Each generation brought new changes, new adaptations, new possibilities, and humanity changed too, not through forced evolution or engineering, but through collaboration and understanding. The Nexeri's crystal technology, divorced from its original purpose of enforcing perfection, offered new ways to heal, to build, to explore. In the end, the war that had begun with a declaration of human inferiority had led to something far greater than victory. It had led to evolution, not just of bodies or technology, but of ideas. The species that had tried to perfect itself beyond the need for change had learned the greatest lesson humanity had to teach, that true perfection lies not in reaching an ultimate form, but in maintaining the endless capacity to adapt, to change, to grow. As Maya looked out over the Evolution Center, watching human and Nexeri children playing together, their forms and ideas constantly changing and adapting, she smiled. They had not just saved Earth or reformed an empire. They had unleashed something far more powerful, the perfect freedom to be imperfect, to change, to evolve. The universe, vast and chaotic and full of possibilities, stretched out before them. And for the first time in their history, both species were ready to face it not as perfect beings, but as perfect learners, perfect adapters, evolution's true champions.